My father sold my house behind my back to pay off my sister's debts. And he waited until Christmas, even till my plane landed after 6 months in the North Pacific, to announce it in front of 30 people. That was the night I learned blood can betray you more precisely than any stranger ever could. Snow slammed sideways across Willow Landing Road when I stepped out of the rental truck, my sea bag hitting the porch with a dull, tired thud. Every light in the house blazed like a holiday postcard. Gold ribbons, wreaths, silhouettes of laughing guests moving past the windows, all inside the home I bought myself. I wasn't even out of my flight boots when the door flew open. Music burst out first, then voices, then the smell of cinnamon cider and cheap champagne. I stepped into my own living room and felt instantly like an uninvited guest. People lined the walls and crowded around the 12-foot fir tree. Neighbors I barely knew. Riley's influencer crew taking selfies. My father's fishing buddies drinking like they owned the place. And in the center, under the brightest lights, stood Cliff Calder, my father one arm around my sister Riley, both holding champagne flutes. Cliff grinned as he'd rehearsed it. "Everyone," he shouted, lifting his glass, "our girl Maya is home. Perfect timing, sweetheart, because you're no longer the owner of this house." The room froze. The music didn't stop, but somehow it sounded far away. Riley tossed her hair, flashing a diamond ear cuff I had definitely never seen before. She raised her glass toward me, smiling sweetly and poisonously. "Dad finalized everything last week. I needed help." He stepped up. Then she added, like it was a joke, "Enjoy your freedom. Sisu won't need a house where you're stationed anyway." My breath fogged in the warm air. Water dripped from my boots onto the hardwood floors. I refinished myself. Something inside my chest twisted, not shock, not anger. Something colder and heavier. I walked further in. Every person stepped aside. The way people move when they realize the story has changed and they are suddenly witnesses. Cliff tried to fill the silence. Maya, Riley, was drowning. "You're strong. You're out there saving people every day. You didn't need this place the way she did." My voice stayed low, steady, too steady. "You sold my house, without me, using paperwork I signed to keep the lights on." Few of Riley's friends snickered, thinking this was still entertainment. I reached into my coat and pulled out the thick folder that had followed me through 3 airports and a blizzard. I set it on my coffee table with a sound that cut through the room like metal on glass. "Before you toast," I said, "you should know something." I opened the folder. The bold letters on the first page reflected the Christmas lights. "Unauthorized transaction, open HELOC title still under Maya Calder." Cliff's face shifted. Riley took a half step back. I looked around the room at the walls I painted, the staircase I fixed after Mom died, the baseboards I installed with my own hands, and felt the last thread between them and me snap clean. "You didn't just sell my house," I said. "You tried to sell it while it was still legally mine. And this," I tapped the document, "is a federal violation." Silence swallowed everything. The champagne, the lights, even the storm outside. Then I asked the question that made every face turn pale. "Dad, are you absolutely sure what you've done here is legal? If your family has ever blindsided you on the very night that was supposed to feel safe, tell me your story in the comments." I read every one, and the following story might be yours. I was born and raised in Port Orchard, Washington, a quiet waterfront town where ferries cut across the bay like slow-moving ghosts. My name is Maya Elise Calder, 31, a Coast Guard rescue swimmer stationed out of Astoria. I spend most of my year hanging from helicopters over black water, pulling strangers out of seas that swallow steel for breakfast. Maybe that's why I held on so tightly to my house. It was the one place in my life that didn't move. The house sat at the end of Willow Landing Roads, mall old. Nothing fancy, but I bought it myself when I was 23, using a loan after my first deployment. Mom cried the day I signed the papers. She stood in the living room, touching the walls as if she were blessing them. "This will be your anchor, Maya," she whispered. A home that waits for you even when the world doesn't. Mom died 6 years later. Ovarian cancer. Fast, brutal. Cliff, my father, fell apart in a quiet, dangerous way. He stopped fishing with his buddies, stopped going to Sunday breakfasts, and stopped opening the curtains in the morning. But the person who suffered the most was my younger sister, Riley. Riley and I were always different. I was the responsible, one, athletic, stubborn, the girl who fixed broken cabinet doors and balanced bill payments. Riley was soft, emotional, and a little chaotic. Mom used to joke that Riley had a heart too big for her own ribs. After Mom died, Riley locked herself in her room for 3 days straight. Cliff sat outside her door the whole time, begging her to eat something, anything. When she finally opened it, her face was so hollow it scared both of us. From that moment on, Dad made a silent promise one. He repeated in every action afterwards. Protect Riley at all costs. Even if it meant losing himself. Even if it meant using me. At first, it looked harmless. Small things. Dad is covering her. Phone bill. Driving her to counseling. She bought her new equipment when she started live streaming makeup tutorials. Then came the bigger things. Riley dropped out of community college. Her part-time jobs lasted 2 weeks. She said being an influencer was her shot at stability, and Dad believed her with the kind of desperation that comes from grief, not logic. Meanwhile, I was gone for long stretches: Kodiak, Astoria, San Diego, back to Astoria. Whenever I came home between deployments, Dad would say the same line: Riley's trying, Maya. She just needs a little more help. Then a little more. Then a little more after that. I kept the house financially afloat from thousands of miles away. Before each rotation, I signed a limited power of attorney, allowing Dad to pay utilities and handle repairs while I was away. It felt harmless at the time. I trusted him. He was my father. But grief doesn't turn people evil. It turns them blind. Riley's spending habits, balloon ring lights, designer jackets, handbags, she called brand investments. Whenever Dad couldn't keep up, he texted me small requests. Can you send $200 just for now? Riley's rent's short. Again, she needs this program to build her platform. I transferred what I could. Family, right? But each time I went home, the air felt tighter. Cliff's eyes darted when money came up. Riley avoided mine entirely, wearing things I knew neither of them could afford. Still, I didn't want to assume the worst. You don't look for betrayal in the people who raised you. You assume they're tired, stressed, and overwhelmed. You assume love means safety. The truth is that love without boundaries can become a weapon. And by the time I realized that, they had already used it against me. My house, the one place Mom told me to protect, had become the solution to everyone's problems but mine. 2 months before Christmas Eve, I was sitting on the steel bench in the ready room at Air Station Astoria, peeling off my dry suit after a night sortie. Salt still crusted the back of my neck. My hands stung from cold water and rope burns. All I wanted was 10 minutes of silence. Instead, my phone buzzed. A FaceTime call, Dad. I hesitated before answering. Calls during my rotations usually meant a bill needed to be paid or Riley needed something urgent. When the camera finally connected, Dad was sitting on my old couch in Port Orchard, the one I bought secondhand right after I moved in. Behind him, Riley stepped into the frame, holding a bright orange Louis Vuitton Pochette Métis as if it were a newborn baby. Look, Maya, she squealed, rotating it for the camera. Limited edition. I needed this for a collab shoot brands. Love girls who elevate their look. Dad smiled weakly, the same worn-out smile he'd used for years whenever Riley wanted something expensive. She's really trying to build her platform, kiddo, he said. These influencer things take investment. You wouldn't understand. Funny, I understood enough to know the bag costs more than my flight pay. I didn't argue. I just stared at the two of them, exhausted down to the bone. When the call ended, I sat alone in the ready room listening to the hum of the heater and the distant whir of a helicopter winding down. The emptiness hit quick and deep a punch without warning. Dad didn't ask how my mission went. He didn't ask if I was safe or warm or alive. He called to show me a purse. A week later, I saw Riley wearing a Canada Goose parka, boots from a brand I couldn't even pronounce, and a new ring light set up in her background. Money didn't materialize out of thin air. Someone was paying for all of it. I wanted to believe Dad was managing things responsibly. But belief and truth rarely share a bed. One afternoon between drills, I checked Zillow. It's something I do sometimes, watch the home value climb a little, feel grounded. Remember Mom's voice telling me the house was my anchor? I tapped in my address out of habit. The listing popped up instantly. Pending backup offers welcome. A professional photo of my front porch filled the screen. Fresh paint, decorative wreath I didn't own. The caption read, "Charming coastal home, move-in ready." My lungs forgot how to work. The listing agent's name glared back at me. Ethan Hale, one of Dad's old fishing buddies who'd gotten into real estate on the side. I scrolled numb, barely aware of the cold metal bench under me. Price, $42,000 over what I paid. Status, offer accepted. Closing timeline, fast track. My pulse spiked, then flatlined into something icy. I called Dad, straight to voicemail. Called again, voicemail. Again. Nothing. I texted Riley. Me, why is my house listed? Riley, read, no reply. That night, the sky outside the barracks, filled with sleet so thick it blurred every light on the base. I sat on the edge of my bunk until the lights out horn blew, replaying every conversation Dad had dodged over the past year. Every, "We're fine, Maya." Every, "Just help your sister this once." Every time he changed the subject when I asked how Riley was paying rent, the pieces were there. They'd always been there. I didn't want to see them. But betrayal doesn't need permission. It grows in the silence where trust once lived. Then came the moment that ended any hope that this was a misunderstanding. Scrolling old emails, I found the POA document I'd signed before deployment, a simple permission slip for Dad to handle utilities and minor repairs. But attached to it in a thread I had somehow missed was a message forwarded from Ethan Hale. "It's all set on your end, Cliff. We can close in 12 days. No lender, no problem." 12 days. The exact timeline is unclear, as I wouldn't be home for it. They counted on me being gone, on me being in the sky or the water or anywhere but the place I fought to own. I sat there staring at the screen until my vision blurred. All at once, the barracks felt too small, the air too thin. The house Mom blessed with her hands, the house she told me would wait for me, was being sold out from under me by the two people who should have protected it. I knew then this wasn't carelessness, this wasn't grief. This wasn't Riley being irresponsible or Dad being naive. This was deliberate, calculated, and it was only the beginning. The morning after I found the listing, the wind off the Pacific threw sleet against the barracks windows hard enough to rattle the frames. I sat on the floor beside my bunk, laptop open, emails spread across the screen like pieces of a puzzle I hadn't wanted to solve. I had a choice then. Pretend this was a misunderstanding or face the fact that the two people I loved most were about to take everything I'd built. I chose the second. I called the military legal assistance office in Seattle. A woman with a calm voice answered, introducing herself as Attorney Lauren Dawson, an expert in service member financial protections. I told her everything in one breath: the listing, the POA, the ignored calls, the luxury items Riley showed off, the email from Ethan Hale promising a fast-track closing. There was a long silence on her end. Then her voice came back, sharper. "Maya, listen to me carefully. A power of attorney cannot be used to open new debt unless the principal explicitly authorized it. If your father opened a home equity line of credit in your name, that is a breach of fiduciary duty and possibly fraud." My stomach tightened. "How much are we talking?" she asked. I read the figure from the HELOC notice I'd found buried in my spam folder that morning. 135,000. Dawson exhaled. "This is serious. You need to freeze your credit, change every online password, gather every screenshot and statement you can. Do not alert your father or sister. They will attempt to cover their tracks." Her voice softened just a fraction, and Maya, "I'm sorry, people you trust can still make devastating choices." I ended the call with a strange feeling. Not panic, not anger. More like the slow click of a lock turning in my mind. Something that had been uncertain was suddenly, brutally clear. For the next 3 hours, I sat cross-legged on the barracks floor, building a digital folder titled House Urgent. I screenshotted every Venmo transfer Dad had requested for Riley, every text asking for help just this once, every email where he dodged questions about the house or utilities. Every photo Riley posted showed items she couldn't afford. The evidence grew into a timeline, one I hadn't wanted to see, but couldn't unsee anymore. At noon, Dawson emailed me a PDF from the Kitsap County Recorder's Office. HELOC, $135,000 borrower. Maya E. Calder, attorney-in-fact, Cliff Calder 3 withdrawals within 4 days. All transferred into an account belonging to Riley Calder. My chest hollowed out. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a lapse in judgment. It was a plan. A plan that required 2 signatures. Dad's and mine, though I had never touched that document. Then came the attachment that killed the last shred of hope. Purchase and sale agreement buyer, Kendra and Nolan Reese. Their names hit me like a slap. Riley's closest friend from high school and the man she'd married last spring. Cash. Deal. No lender. No title report. Closing 12 days. And under. The seller's signature line. Cliff Calder. Attorney in fact for Maya Elise Calder. Dawson's message followed seconds later. They can't legally close, but they are moving fast. Keep documenting everything. Do not return home without an exit plan. I stared at the screen as the heater clicked on and the windows trembled. In the wind, the whole world felt tilted. My father, who taught me how to bait a fishing hook, how to tie down a kayak in a storm, how to steady my breathing before a rescue dive, had signed my house away to Riley's friends. I closed the laptop and pressed my forehead to my knees. I remembered the last conversation with Mom in that house. She sat on the edge of my childhood bed, squeezing my hand. "You're the strong one, Maya," she'd whispered. "But don't let strength be the reason people take from you." For years, I thought she meant the ocean, the dangers. Work. I never imagined she meant my own family. By evening, the wind had turned vicious. Snow blew sideways across the tarmac. A helicopter crew chained their bird to the deck grate while I stood nearby. Jackets snapping in the gusts, Dawson's instructions echoing in my mind. Freeze credit, change passwords, store evidence, stay quiet. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was the realization that they had planned this, assuming I wouldn't be home, assuming my service, my absence made me disposable. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake listening to the storm pound the barracks roof, imagining Cliff and Riley sitting in my living room, signing papers under my mother's chandelier, using the POA I'd given in good faith to carve me out of my own life. They thought. Distance made me powerless. They were wrong. The flight into Spokane landed hard, wheels skidding on a runway coated in Christmas ice. I'd barely felt it. I'd spent the last 21 hours reading every document Attorney Dawson sent me, over and over, until each line carved itself into my bones. By the time I picked up the rental truck, a silver Tacoma with chains already installed, I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. It took an additional 2 hours to push through the 4th of July pass in whiteout conditions. Snow whipped sideways across the windshield, and the wipers smeared ice in shaky arcs. But I kept going mile after. My land till the familiar glow of Port Orchard finally rose behind the trees. And then I saw my house. Every light blazed like a showroom. Garlands wrapped around the porch posts. The 12-foot tree glowed through the front window. Silhouettes danced inside, glasses raised, music thumping so hard I could feel it through. The truck's frame. They were celebrating inside a home that was still legally mine. I killed the engine 2 houses down and sat in the silence, gripping the binder of documents Dawson had helped assemble. At 11:12 p.m., I stepped out into the snow. My boots sank deep with each step, the cold bit at my face. But nothing in the storm compared to the cold I carried inside. When I reached the porch, my hand didn't even shake as I turned the knob. The door opened into chaos, cinnamon-scented. Candles, cheap champagne fizzing in plastic cups, the scratch of Mariah Carey pulsing through the speakers. People laughed, posed for selfies, and toasted the deal of the year. No one noticed me at first, then Cliff did. He stood under the chandelier. Mom chose Riley on one side, 2 of Riley's friends on the other, his face flushed with wine and pride. He raised his nearly empty glass. "Well, would you look at that?" he shouted. "Our hero's finally here. Amaya, you missed it. We closed the sale this week. House is gone. Riley gets her clean start." Riley clapped, bright and manic, as if she were hosting a giveaway. "Congrats to us," she laughed. Kendra and Nolan signed everything. "They're moving in right after New Year's." The room chuckled. Phones lifted. Oh, someone recorded. I stepped forward, the air shifting like everyone suddenly remembered whose house they were standing in. Riley rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, Maya, don't be dramatic." Dad handled it. "You were never here anyway," Cliff added, louder to cover. The tension. Family steps up for family. Riley needed help. "You're strong. You didn't need this house the way she does." I placed the binder on the coffee table. Sound flat, heavy cut straight through the music. The room stilled. I opened it to the first page and turned it toward Cliff. "This," I said quietly, "is the HELOC you opened in my name. $135,000. 3 withdrawals. All into Riley's account." Riley's smile cracked. Cliff's hand trembled around his glass. Someone whispered, "Oh, hell." I flipped to the next page. The purchase and sale. Agreement buyers Kendra and Nolan Rees. Cash deal. No lender, no title report. No VA occupancy waiver. Meaning I looked directly at Kendra and Nolan, who were sitting on my couch with champagne still in their hands. "Okay, you can't legally close. Not now, not ever." Kendra's flute slipped from her fingers and shattered on the rug. Nolan went pale. "This was supposed to be a private sale," Nolan stammered. "Cliff said POA made everything legal." "It doesn't," I said. "It makes it fraught." Gasps rippled across the room. I flipped to the final page, Cliff's. Fake signature written in his shaky hand. "You didn't just try to sell my house," I said. "You used paperwork I gave you out of trust to sign my life away." Cliff opened his mouth, but no. Sound came out. Riley sputtered, "This is insane." "We gave Ethan 70 grand up front, non-refundable. He said it was a sure thing." There it was. Ethan Hale, the real estate guy who cut corners like it was a sport. I looked Riley in the eye. "You handed $70,000 to a man who didn't even run a title search. And you did it with money that wasn't yours." The room was dead still now. Even the music felt muted, suffocated under the weight of what I'd said. Then I stepped closer, slow, deliberate. "So, let's paint the picture," I said. "You threw a party in a house still titled to me. You tried to push a sale that couldn't be closed. And the bank holding the HELOC is about to find out. Their collateral was being sold behind their back." Cliff's face collapsed, color draining, eyes losing focus. "Maya, we were just trying to help Riley start over," he whispered. "No," I said. "You were trying to fix her life with mine." Riley's eyes filled with panic for the first time. Kendra spoke up, voice shaking. "We're suing." All three of you. Nolan nodded, jaw tight. This is fraud. We're coming for our money. Riley sank onto the couch like someone cut her strings, and I felt nothing. Not anger, not triumph, just clarity. I stepped toward the door, turned once and said the last words I would ever say in that house. Hope the party was worth it. It's the last one you'll ever have under my roof. Then I walked out. Snow swallowed the sound of the door closing behind me. I didn't go home after the confrontation. I drove straight to a 24-hour diner off Bay Street, ordered a black coffee I barely drank, and waited for dawn. By 7:32 a.m., Attorney Dawson had already filed the emergency packet we prepared. By 8:10, the Kitsap County Recorder stamped a notice preventing any transfer of title. My house was locked down legally, officially, permanently until the investigation was complete. The consequences began faster than I expected. 1. The buyers strike back at 9:45 a.m. Kendra and Nolan Reese walked into the cafe where I waited for Dawson's call. They looked like they hadn't slept. Ethan Hale told us everything was clean, Nolan said, voice tight. He never said you were active duty, never showed us the lien. We're filing today. Dawson joined the call over speaker. Based on the documents, she said, you have actionable claims for fraud inducement and damages for the $70,000 transferred. We'll support your affidavit, Miss Calder. Kendra wiped her eyes. We trusted your family. I nodded once. So did I. They left to meet their attorney. Their lawsuit was filed in the county civil docket by 2 p.m. ***. 2. The bank responds *** at 3:27 p.m. Dad tried to call. I didn't answer. At 4:02, the bank called instead. The HELOC division had received Dawson's notice. They had seen the attempted sale. They confirmed my credit freeze. And then the representative said the sentence that shifted everything. Ms. Calder, because you are active duty, the misuse of your POA activates federal protections. We are opening a fraud investigation. All responsibility rests with the signer who acted beyond his authority. Cliff, the bank issued an acceleration notice. Every dollar Dad withdrew had to be repaid immediately. Couldn't. He never could. Legal gears turned fast after that. The bank placed a lis pendenza legal freeze on Dad's only rental property. His truck was flagged for repossession. His tool trailer, the one he used for side jobs, was listed as business collateral and secured for seizure. Dad was calling again and again and again. I let it ring. 3. Riley's collapse while the bank moved. Riley's world cracked open. Her credit cards maxed, past due, notice size filed, emails from sponsorships pulled. Screenshots of public lawsuits circulated across local gossip pages. At 5 p.m., her live stream crashed under a flood of comments. Fraud? Did you steal your sister's house? Where's the money, Riley? Within hours, Brands backed out. Her follower count tanked. And when collection agencies learned about the HELOC transfers, they joined the line. Every debt she'd buried came knocking at once. Riley texted me. Riley, please talk to me, Riley. We didn't mean for it to go this far, Riley. You're ruining our lives. I stared at the last message for a long time. Then I turned the screen off. I didn't owe her a response. ***4. Dad hits. Bottom *** at 6:41 p.m., Mrs. Aldrich Dad's elderly neighbor called. Maya, honey, he's been sitting in his truck for an hour. He looks hollow. Maybe talk to him. I drove over. His Silverado was parked crooked in her driveway, headlights still on. Cliff sat hunched behind the wheel, holding the bank's acceleration packet like it was a death notice. He rolled the window down with a shaking hand. They're taking everything, he whispered. The rental, my tools, my truck. I have 30 days, Maya. Please, tell them to stop. I'll sign whatever you want. I'll give you the rental. I shook my head. You don't have anything left to give. His eyes filled with tears, raw and red. I just wanted Riley to be okay. And you broke me to do it. I said softly. Live with that. He reached for my sleeve. I stepped back. Do not call me again, Dad. Do not send people to speak on your behalf. This ends here. I walked away while snow collected on his windshield, and he didn't even have the strength to clear it. 5. System. Not revenge, the legal system. Moved as it always does, slowly, procedurally, relentlessly. 48 hours later, Cliff filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. The trustee seized the rental property, the Silverado, the tool trailer, the workshop gear he loved more than anything Riley ever owned. Riley faced 3 separate collections lawsuits, then wage garnishment, and her first court summons. Ethan Hale lost his real estate license pending a full ethics review. The investigation transcript read like a manual on everything not to do in real estate. And me. My title was cleared. The HELOC is frozen. My credit has been restored. My ownership is intact. Not because I fought with vengeance, but because I finally let consequences do their job. 3 weeks after the bankruptcy hearing, I turned in the keys to the old house. Not because I had to, but because I was done letting memories anchor me to a place that no longer felt like mine. I rented a small 3rd-floor walk-up near the Port Orchard Marina. Exposed brick, creaky floors, a view of the water through east-facing windows. No yard, no history. Just a blank page. On my first night there, I unpacked Mom's cedar box and set it on the window ledge. Her wedding ring. A photo of the 3 of us at my chief pinning ceremony. Her Coast Guard auxiliary pin. My only inheritance and the only part of my family that still felt true. The fallout didn't stop. When Cliff tried driving by the building twice in 1 week, and Riley created 3 new numbers to send crying voice memos, Dawson stepped in again. She filed for a 24-month protection order. The judge approved it the same afternoon. 500-foot radius, no calls, no contact. No third-party messages. Violations equals immediate arrest. The certified copy came in the mail 2 days later. I framed it in a black frame and hung it above my desk, not out of spite, but because some boundaries need to be visible. For the first time in my life, I slept through the night. In June, Dawson came to Port Orchard for a maritime legal seminar. She dropped her duffel in my living room, kicked off her boots, and claimed the couch like she'd been doing it for years. We spent evenings on the narrow balcony, drinking hot cocoa spiked with peppermint schnapps, watching the fairy lights glide across the dark bay. One night she came back from the lobby holding an envelope by the corner, as if it might burn her fingers. Certified mail, she said softly. Return address, county detention. My stomach didn't drop, didn't do anything at all. I opened it on the kitchen island with my dive knife. 5 pages of pencil-press letter from Cliff. Words scraped deep enough to tear the paper. He wrote about the fraud plea. 18 months. Losing the tools. Losing the rental. Losing everything. He wrote that he never meant for it to end like this. He wrote he was trying to hold the family together after Mom died. He wrote he hoped one day I'd forgive him. I read exactly 10 lines. Then I folded the pages once, walked to the fireplace, and dropped them in. The paper curled, darkened, and disappeared up the chimney in drifting ash. Dawson tapped her glass against mine. We didn't say a word. The next morning, I went to the Verizon store on Bay Street. I changed my number. New account, new carrier. Area code from the opposite side of the country. I deleted every shared album, every old family chat, every childhood photo Riley had ever tagged me in. Then I updated my Coast Guard emergency contact. Primary attorney Lauren Dawson, JAG Corps. My SGLI beneficiary, 2. When the confirmation flashed green, I stood in the middle of my apartment and listened. Silence. Not the heavy silence of betrayal, the clean silence of a life that no longer belonged to anyone but me. Below the window, the water slapped softly against the pilings. A ferry horn echoed across the bay. Dawn rolled over the marina in pale gold, the first time. Since I was 17, I didn't feel responsible for fixing the messes other people made. I didn't feel like anyone's safety net, anyone's wallet, anyone's second chance. I was just Maya again, strong but no longer someone to take from. On December 23rd, 1 year after the night, everything burned down. I climbed the 3 flights of stairs carrying a small noble fir I cut from the national forest myself. Snow dusted the branches. Pitch stuck to my gloves. I set it near the window, wrapped it in one strand of plain white lights. No ornaments, no theatrics, just light. That night, Dawson and 2 teammates from Astoria rolled in with steaks, hot chocolate, and a battered deck of cards. 5 people in a small apartment. Boots are dripping on the tile, laughter bouncing off the brick walls. No drama, no tension. No debts, no lies. Just warmth. Just chosen family. Before we went to sleep, I climbed onto the coffee table and placed a small 5-point star cut from an old helicopter tail rotor on the top branch. The metal caught the firelight and scattered it across the ceiling like shards of sunrise. Dawson raised her mug. "To the people who stay," she said quietly. "Not the ones we were born with, the ones who choose us." We clinked mugs, soft, steady. Not a celebration, a declaration. And as snow fell silently outside the window, I finally understood something Mom had tried to teach me long ago. Family isn't the people who share your blood. Family is the people who don't sell your house.